Tonight we are in Makerfield in Greater Manchester, which is starting to feel like the epicentre of British politics. The constituency has been thrust into the spotlight. Voters here in 2 weeks' time could decide the next Prime Minister or plunge the Labour Party into further chaos. Our audience members arriving here this evening reflect the general political picture across this constituency. Welcome to Question Time from Makerfield. On the panel, the Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham. If he wins this by-election, he's widely expected to challenge Keir Starmer for the Labour leadership. He says he's stepping forward to answer a deafening cry for change. Another man with high hopes of winning the seat is Robert Kenyon of Reform UK, a self-employed plumber and former Army reservist. He says it would be a massive honour to represent the area where he was born. The Conservative candidate is Michael Winstanley. He's the former Mayor of Wigan and has served as a councillor here for 16 years. He wants to ease the tax burden on business and revive local high streets. Sarah Wakefield is standing for the Green Party. She is a councillor at Manchester City Council. She says the Greens want to bring hope and joy to the conversation about Makerfield's future. And Jake Austin represents the Liberal Democrats. He is a Stockport councillor and stood as a candidate to be Mayor of Greater Manchester in 2024. He's calling for better public transport across the northwest and more affordable homes for young people. Good evening. Welcome to our panellists. Welcome to our audience here in Makerfield. Very good to see you. And of course, welcome to you at home. This should be an interesting and possibly quite lively programme. If you want to join in the conversation on social media, which is always lively, feel free. Otherwise, sit back and let's see how it goes. Let's kick off with our first question, which is from Billy Haggerty.
Hi. How can politicians restore the public's trust and confidence in them, given these scandals, U-turn and broken promises?
All right, well, also I'm going to come to all of you on the panel. Make sure you get a fair shout. Andy, let's start with you.
It's by changing the way we do politics. I can't give you any other answer, and I mean fundamental change. I was in Westminster, as you may remember. I did represent part of this constituency. It was in the old Lee constituency, Hindley Green, Bickershaw, Hindley was in. And I found that I went down there and I was speaking into Parliament, and in the end, it took me a long time to realise that the system just simply was not set up to support places like ours, and it treated us as the bottom of the list rather than the top of the list. And it's the point scoring, isn't it? You know, the kind of whole setup of Westminster. People go to point scoring before they go to problem solving. It's party first rather than place first and people collaborating. And it took me a long time to realise it, but I did realise it, and that's why I left in 2010. 2017. I just felt I couldn't do my best for the Northwest and for this part of the world that I care about so much in that system. As Mayor of Greater Manchester, I pioneered a new politics. Place first, not party first. Long term, not short term. Problem solving, not point scoring. Pro-business, working with the community and voluntary sector, getting everybody together, unifying people behind a drive to make Greater Manchester what we all want it to be. And look at us, the fastest growing city region in the country. We've developed a new public transport system. You know, it's amazing what you can achieve if you start to work like that. And actually, I felt my connection with people has improved. And what I would say is that approach, a more collaborative politics, a more, if you like, long-term approach to solving the country's problems needs to be taken from here, Greater Manchester, and taken down there. Okay. Fundamental change in Westminster to restore the public's trust.
Now, when it comes to restoring the public's trust, we might as well address this head on because we had a lot of questions about it. In fact, the most questions about you personally were about this, which is that we are having this by-election. This is not a usual by-election. Someone has stood down specifically so that you can stand and, should you win, have a go at getting inside the door of number 10. Let's make no bones about it. Now, a number of you, a lot of you asked, but let's hear from some of you who asked about exactly that. Yes.
You just said then, if, as an MP for Lee, you couldn't make much change because of the party politics. So what are you actually going to do for the people of Makerfield himself you have to be hidden under a rock to think maybe you aren't going to go for the leadership against Keir. What changes are you going to make that Labour Party great again?
I mean, I'm making no assumptions about this election. I'm not, because you all know it's tight. You know that. Because you speak to people in your communities. No,
this is why you're running, Andy. Let's be clear about that.
Answer the question. I mean, it's an important question. It's not a given, and I don't see it as such. I'm fighting hard because, to me, it is about trying to rebuild politics and make it work for people here. And when I was in the cabinet, I had influence and I used it for people here. I got the Lee Sports Village built. We got Bickershaw Marina. I got a young girl who'd been abducted and taken to Libya. I got her back with her mum in Hindley Green. I have always used my political influence for people here. Hillsborough was another example. I've never abandoned this place at all. On Sunday, it's the 25th anniversary of me being an elected Greater Manchester representative. But I know I can't do everything within the system as it currently is. Right. So all I can say to you is, I would take the fight to change politics and change this country as high as I could so that it worked for here. All right. And it doesn't work for here right now. Look at the flooding problem.
OK, all right, Andy, let me bring in the rest of the panel.
This place was top of the list, not where Westminster put it, which is bottom of the list.
I will come to you, Michael, but let me bring in the rest of the panel. So, Rob, let's address this question to you. How can politicians restore the public's trust?
I'll just go back to Billy's question about restoring trust. I think a big move away from career politicians would certainly help, and having normal people involved in politics. Andy touches on us being the fastest growing economy. Does anybody in Makerfield feel that we've got the fastest growing economy? Or is it all just kept in Manchester? We keep giving our council tax. There's a bigger percentage every year being taken by Manchester. While Manchester thrives, we're struggling to survive in Wigan. We've been left behind. So my point would be, get normal people in politics, people who care about the place, people who live in the place and people who want to stay here and not use it as a stepping stone for other things.
So look, in the interest of fairness, I put to Andy the thing that so many of you said, which is basically, you're doing this election in order to try and get into number 10. The question asked most by the audience about you personally, Rob, was about comments you've made, in particular about women. Now, a number of you put that point. Are any of you, can I see from those of you who have said, yes, the woman with the... Did you ask about that? Yes, let's hear what you've got to say.
I'd rather have a career politician than a plumber who's a sexist.
So, Rob, I want to give you a chance to answer that. You know, I want to give you a fair shout. So just for those of you may not all be aware of things that Rob has said in the past, you described yourself as sexist.
Allegedly.
What, you're denying that was a tweet by you?
No, some of the things, not...
OK, you described yourself as a sexist. You have made offensive comments about women. You've admitted that. You've also said that abortion is the cowardly act of women murdering defenceless baby and that women do it so they can shag anyone they want. That's your phrase, not mine.
Yeah,
As I say, I'm raising it because lots of people in the audience raise it and I want to give you a chance to answer.
That's OK. I'll address those questions. So I won't accept that label. I mean, a lot of the things have been said 15 years ago. I hold my hands up. I've made mistakes. And said
the one about abortion was just 2 to 3 years ago.
I'm just addressing the first point where she said, where I was given a label that I won't accept. I was brought up by a single parent and my grandma, who was a widow, and an older sister. So I was brought up by women. I've got nothing but respect for women. You know, so I think something that's said, you know, 15 years ago, dragged up from an old rugby forum, you know, it's completely taken out of context. And like I say, I've made mistakes. I said things years ago that I wouldn't say now, and I definitely don't believe that on that point. You know, yeah, so I hope that addresses that issue. And it's, like I say, I've got nothing but respect for women.
Can I just come on this point, though? Because I actually spoke to Carol Vorderman this morning. She called me because she is really distressed that you have failed to apologise for any of these comments. So you said
about her specifically?
Her specifically. And she is watching at home tonight. And I wonder if you can look down that camera and say to Carol, you know what, I'm sorry. Can you do that?
Do you know what? I'm just answering that one. So I think, you know, people have probably seen what's been said, but I never actually said anything to Carol. I commented on a comment. Okay. Don't get me wrong, it was a disgusting comment that somebody else had written, but I commented on the comment.
With approval?
Okay.
Pardon?
With approval.
No, it was a crass joke, and it's not something I'd say now.
Can I
All
just
right,
say,
all right,
A
I
long
need
time
you-
ago on social media.
every woman in this room and at home has been subject to shaming, whether in person or online.
And that's disgusting.
It is,
It's horrible, yeah. It is
yeah,
horrible.
I think you're just proving my point. Can you believe this? Honestly, we have all been subjected to it. And the fact that a man like you cannot sit and do a simple apology, I think is disgraceful. But on top of that,
I've addressed the issue quite a few
Reform's
times.
policies on women are shocking.
right.
Reform on day one wants to repeal the Equality Act.
That's
That is your party policy. I can't believe, as a mum of a young daughter, I'm having to sit here in 2026 and make the case for me and my daughter to have the right for equal pay. This is what the Reform Party stand for. They are a party that has a problem with women and they need to sort it out.
Well, this is not all about you, this programme. I'll let you answer, of course, and then I must come around the rest of the panel.
No problem. So we will replace the Equalities Act with the Workplace Fairness Act, and all those women's protections will carry over into the new Act.
Right.
No
So
hard-fought women's protections will suffer or be scrapped. They'll all go over, especially with maternity and pregnancy.
Given that you can't apologise, I'm not sure I trust them.
I'm going to bring in the rest of the panel because I must give you all a fair shout to answer this question. Michael, how can politicians restore the public's trust and confidence in them?
I think the way that they can do that is by judging them on their actions. So when they say things, when they make promises, they actually deliver them. And that's how we hold them to account. But that's a great bit about democracy, because actually you have got the right, every single one of you, to vote people out when they don't do what they have said to do. Now, just to come on to Andy's point about how we restore faith in politics, it's not that long ago, Andy, that you were telling everybody that this was the greatest job in the world and that you was going to see out your full term. But we're here, halfway through. It's less than 2 years since Josh was elected as my Member of Parliament here in Makerfield. And I'm actually quite disgusted, really, and sad that we're having this by-election foisted upon us. And you said about putting party first. You are putting your party first. Because, could I just end that one? Sure. Because actually, we will get rid of Keir Starmer, whichever politician is elected in this by-election. And actually, if you vote for me, it'll speed it up straight away.
Yes, but... OK, quickly, Andy.
Yeah, I mean, you've been in politics a long time. You and I know each other because we've worked together over a long period of time. You cannot control events in politics. I can't control what happened in Parliament. And let's not forget, in this borough, 25 council seats went away from the party. And you just can't ignore those things. The public here are saying quite loudly to all of us, we need something very different here than what's being served up. And you can't just say, oh, well, I don't hear that, I don't see it, and I'm just going to sort of sit where I am. I mean, that's just the reality of politics, Michael, and you have to sort of react to those things as they happen.
It is, but what we're getting served up is more Labour Party. We need a radical change.
Michael, let's talk about the Conservatives for a minute, because the question is about restoring trust, and it's quite clear the Conservatives have lost trust after a series of Prime Ministers. How on earth do you begin to restore trust in the audience here after the previous administration?
Yeah, there's no two ways about it that we had a massive defeat in 2024. And part of that process now of going back, and this is what Kemi as leader has started to do. It's only about restoring trust. You've got to accept and own that we made mistakes, and that's what she has done. But now what we're doing is looking forward to make sure that we can oppose what this Labour government is doing to address the things like cost of living, but also setting out a plan about how we're going to deal with things like migration, cost of living, getting things moving again. And that's what I want to talk about at this by-election. I want to talk about the high streets, crime, antisocial behaviour and getting rid of congestion across Makerfield, because it's about electing your Member of Parliament. And as someone that lives here, I care about it and I want to deliver on that plan.
All right. I'm going to come to you both as well to answer this question, but I'm just going to hear a little bit from the audience first. Woman at the back with the glasses, right at the very back.
Hi, so I watch the programme all the time, every week. And
oh, good. I'm glad to hear it. Thank you very much.
And I just find that politicians can never answer a question straight. You ask them a question, you never get an answer. And it is so disappointing when Fiona asks you, will you stand, to challenge Keir Starmer, that you cannot say yes, that you will. We all know that you will, so why can't you just say it?
I'll come back to you, Andy, on that. I will come back to you on that. Man here in the pink.
Yourself, you raised a really valid point about, as a community, we want a normal person, a real person stepping in and taking charge to make sure the people of our constituency can get ahead in life the best they can. And I would rather have a community made up of diversity, of women, of LGBT people, of young people, of people with disabilities, than someone like yourself who is sexist and has shown on more than one occasion an opposition to diversity, just as your party does.
Woman here in the jacket.
My question is, why, as Reform, it's close between both of you in the polls, and I want you to win. So
What, you want Andy Burnham to win?
I do.
Right.
I want, the sooner the better that Keir Starmer walks out of Downing Street, the better for me and everybody else. We want him to go. Everybody wants him to go. We can't stand him, actually. But he's not for the people
just say
anyway.
what you really think.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because he's not for the people. He doesn't listen. That's his downfall. But my question is, Reform, having their manifesto, they're going to raise the tax threshold. Why is that not in your manifesto? Because if you put that in your manifesto, you'll walk this by-election easy.
You're right, OK.
You need to put that in your... if not for everybody,
you heard it here.
For pensioners.
Man at the front in the glass.
This by-election has just been called because, basically, Keir Starmer is collateral damage because of the Epstein files. Because Mandelson was in the Epstein files. Keir Starmer knew what he'd done. He'd lied to Parliament. He lied to all the MPs. And that's why everybody in the country knew he'd lied. Right? He was on TV. He was all over when he was in Commons.
Right, OK. All right, I mean, he obviously, Keir Starmer, clearly is not here to answer for himself. He may take it differently. Just so you're aware, I mean, Robbie, you could say this perhaps later, but in terms of raising the tax threshold, I think it was to £20,000, that was a reform policy. It's not currently a reform policy. It's an aim, isn't it, but not a current policy.
Yeah, it was in 2024, but I mentioned you said pensions are getting poorer. You know, just think about what happened with the, with the winter fuel allowance.
Let me bring the rest of the panel in, because you need to answer these points. So, Jake, let's come to you. Let's answer the question, Billy's question. How can politicians restore the public's trust and confidence in them, given scandals, U-turns, broken promises, etc.?
I think it comes back to so much of what has already been asked in this room tonight. So, to answer your question directly about why isn't there a manifesto in this, it's because this isn't a general election. This is an election for a potential future Prime Minister via the back door, and that's not the right way to be doing politics.
I'll come back. I will wrap at the end.
Let's
let him answer.
So Andy's not releasing a manifesto for this because he's not saying the quiet part out loud. And coming back to what somebody earlier said about...
He's not running for the general election.
All right, let's you're going to be on the panel in a minute. I know, you're gagging to me. Let's let the panel answer. Jake, go on.
So coming back to what somebody mentioned earlier about honesty being an integral part of politics. Now, Andy has consistently... We've fought against each other in the 2024 Greater Manchester Mayoral. He's consistently talked a good game about politicians working together to restore trust in politics. But fundamental to that is being honest with residents and constituents. Yet he refuses to say the quiet part out loud, that the reason he asked his mate to step down so he could run in this by-election is not so he could become MP for Makerfield, it's so that he could become the Prime Minister instead.
And listen, I'm going to let you answer, and also because it was a question from the woman at the back. Listen, let's just talk about the Lib Dems for a minute, because it is well known that the Lib Dems wish to rejoin the EU. That is clearly your policy as well, as a Liberal Democrat. You are here in Makerfield campaigning for people's trust, but I think it was 67%, something like that, of people in Makerfield voted to 65, voted to leave. So how can you represent these people?
Look, when I'm knocking on doors in Makerfield and I'm talking to voters, they are not bringing up Brexit or rejoining the EU or revisiting a vote that we held 10 years ago. That's not what I'm about, and the Liberal Democrat plan isn't about rejoining the European Union. Yes, we want...
It's a clearly stated aim.
No, our aims as Liberal Democrats are to have a closer tie to the European Union in the forms of a customs union, because that brings an extra £25 billion back into the economy on a yearly basis, generated through revenue, by having those closer ties with the European Union. That £25 billion could do a hell of a lot of good stuff in our constituency. It could revitalise our high streets. It could help us cut the cost of living. It could help with building flooding infrastructure, which is desperately needed in places like Hindley and across the Makerfield constituency. The reason that we want as Liberal Democrats closer ties with the European Union, not to rejoin, but a customs union, is because we know the economic benefits that would bring back to Makerfield and places like this that, frankly, so far have been left behind by Westminster.
OK, Sarah, your turn. How can politicians restore the public's trust and confidence in them?
So I only really recently got involved in politics in this way. I'm actually on maternity leave at the moment. And
well, we're very glad to have you here.
Thank you. And it was actually the last by-election that was called in Greater Manchester that got me involved. And I realised that there is no one else coming to save us. If you have an opinion about what we should do as a country, you have to get involved. And I think we've just seen on the panel here exactly the problem that people have with trust and confidence, because we're all knocking points off each other, trying to say that we're more honest than that person, when actually the fundamental problem we have in this country is that we're building on 40 years of deindustrialisation, topped off by 15 years of austerity, which, to be perfectly honest, the Labour government haven't done enough to address. And we're all feeling it. And we're all feeling the squeeze. We're all feeling the pinch. But you know what we should be really looking at is the massive inequality in this country. 50 of the wealthiest families in this country hold more wealth than 50%. That's 34 million people. That cannot be right. And so as the Green Party, one of the things we want to say, it's not just about changing culture in Westminster, because I'm afraid if we just change Westminster culture, we're not going to change the country. We need to start having serious conversations about who is contributing for a better future for our children, to solve the climate crisis, to get our high streets going, to make sure that we can have the money back in towns and villages so that our young people stay here and work hard and have better lives. So that's what we're all about, is going, let's not just think about Westminster culture that politicians are obsessed with, but think properly about the solutions that we need in this country.
So the question being from Billy about restoring trust and public confidence. Let's just talk about the Green Party record for a minute. So there was a candidate who was going to be... It's part of the reason why you've had to jump in on your maternity leave. There was another candidate who withdrew after 12 hours. And initially, we were told it was for family and personal reasons. Lo and behold, journalists found out the next day that entirely unacceptable comments had been made about the attack on Golders Green on ambulances, where the candidate described it as a false flag attack, i.e. done by either Israel or Jewish people to try and make it look like it was done by somebody else. And there have been numerous anti-Semitic comments made by Green candidates. How does that restore trust and confidence?
We have to be really clear that anti-Semitism has absolutely no part and no place in the Green Party or in our country. And Zach has been extremely clear about that as well. And we have to make sure that those few handful of people are dealt with, that our vetting process is improved, and that we ensure that people can trust the people that we are putting in front of them.
So I just want to come back to Rob. I know you want to come in, but I'm going to try and get other questions in as well. But lots of people have talked about Andy. You talked about it at the back, and I want to make sure your question gets answered, which is, why don't you just say it straight out? I am campaigning for the election. OK, you want to be MP for Makerfield, but you want to get into number 10. This is your moment. Just quickly, because I want to move on.
Well,
come on, this is the time.
I'm not somebody who gets ahead of myself. I can't do anything unless I'm lucky enough to get the support of people here. But if I get your support, I would seek to represent you at the highest possible level and give this constituency maximum power and influence. I think Wes Streeting seems to have launched a leadership contest, so if that is running, I would seek to join it, but I'd have to persuade members of the Parliamentary Labour Party to do the same. So that's the only response there. And on the personal allowance, I've heard it on so many doorsteps, and I've said to my team, let's have a proper look at this and let's develop a policy.
All right, I'm going to move on. But before I do, I just want to say that, of course, there are other candidates. You've heard from 5 candidates on this panel. There are 14 candidates in total, and there is a full list of them on the screen for everyone to see. Let's take another question. After what we've just talked about now, this was the most commonly asked question, so we're going to tackle it. Kath Rishton, where are you sitting? There you go.
In the light of the horrific news regarding the murder of Henry Novak, are we now in a 2-tier policing policy?
So I'm sure none of you need telling, but 18-year-old Henry Novak was murdered by Vikram Digwa in December last year in Southampton. The police turned up on the scene. They mistakenly believed that Henry was the attacker and not Vikram Digwa, and they handcuffed him as he lay dying on the ground. And it has caused outrage universally, I would say, across this country. A number of politicians, Reform and Conservatives in particular, have said it is an example of 2-tier policing. Michael, is it?
The first thing I wanted to say was, having watched that footage, it was just heartbreaking and appalling that Henry's last words on earth were, you know, I can't breathe, and he was actually under arrest. It was absolutely appalling. But I think we need to make sure that we have calm heads in this as we debate this. It's really important that we respect the wishes of the family who've behaved exemplary as they've approached this, and obviously our sympathies are with them. And what we need to do is to make sure that anger can't tear our communities apart, but we need to make sure that the police are operating without fear or favour. That was always the watchword of the police, and we need to make sure we get to that again. We need to make sure this independent inquiry concludes as quickly as possible, and then any of those recommendations are put in swiftly. I've heard too many times over lessons have been learned and we're not going to do this again. This has got to be the moment for change. We cannot have this again, and that's what every single politician should be working towards.
Rob.
Yeah, great point, Michael. And it was absolutely horrendous to, if anyone's seen the body cam footage, it's heartbreaking to see that. It's totally, you know, disgraceful what's going on up and down in the country.
What do you mean by that?
You know, with the knife crime that's affecting the country, you know, violence is never the answer. You know, like Michael said, the wishes of the parents need to be kept, and we need to, not gather, and violence is never the answer, like we seen the other night in Southampton. But I think it just goes to show that there is a 2-tier policing system in this country. I think it's there for everyone to see. That unfortunately, the accusations of racism has been taken more serious than the cries for help from a dying lad who was said he couldn't breathe, and he'd been stabbed. I mean, you look at the Green Party policies, I think it make the country a hell of a lot more dangerous with drugs on the streets and no prisons. So when when the Green candidate is telling us
What, are the Green Party suggesting no prisons?
one of them did in Scotland, I think it was, who was trying to scrap the prison.
The
party policy. I think it was one of the Green candidates in Scotland.
Right. I don't think that's in the manifesto.
I think it'd be a lot more dangerous under the Green Party.
Okay, well, I think we should be focusing on the question.
Well, listen, Rob, I know you want to come in on this point. Your leader's comment, I suggest the rest of us respond to this with pure, cold rage.
I mean, with that one...
Do you support that comment?
I think...
Would you have said it?
What I would say is, anyone who's watched the video or the body cam from the police officer, if anyone's got sons, relatives who are, teenagers going out and about on the town, watch that body cam footage and tell me that you don't feel rage, because that could be any one of your sons and daughters in the streets, unless we get a grip on this 2-tier policing that we've witnessed over the last couple of years under this Labour government.
OK. Let's hear from some people in the audience. The man there with the sort of colourful shirt and glasses, yeah.
Surely policing should be done on the law of the land, not on religion or race.
OK. And there with the glasses.
I'm a doctor in the NHS and I volunteer for a charity called Street Doctors, where we work with young people all across the country, including in schools in this constituency, including in Hindley Prison. And we train young people in, you know, how to save a life if someone's been stabbed and things like that. So I've seen firsthand the impacts that violence has, both in our schools, in our prisons and in our hospitals. What would you do to reduce violence in the first place and prevent young people from being victims and perpetrators of violence?
OK. I'm just going to get around the panel. Yes, woman there in the spotty top.
I'd just like to ask, in terms of Nigel Farage not condemning the violence that went on the other evening, would Rob Kerr too condemn it this evening?
OK, let me just briefly allow you to do that if you want to. You're being asked, do you want to condemn the violence that took place in Southampton?
100% condemn the violence. Violence is not the answer to this. What we need to do is make sure we do it politically, and we reforms policies to get 30,000 extra police officers on the street, and ban knives, regardless of religious background, that we ban knives completely.
Could you mind if I bring other people? Forgive me, just because so many people got their hands up. Yes, the woman there with the glasses in the green and white top. Yeah.
I think people should be enraged with what's happened, but not particularly to that specific crime. More in what policies led to that behaviour.
And what have you got in mind?
Well, the police, for a start off, the training of the police, the underlying training of overlooking, too much DEI going on.
By which you mean diversity, inclusion, equality?
Yeah. I mean, policing and justice should be done no matter who you are, what you are, how you look, what your beliefs are. You should all be judged on what you do.
OK. So, Andy, do we now have a two-tier policing policy?
Not in Greater Manchester, and I'm going to come on to explain why not.
But what about nationally?
I thought Michael...
Because this obviously didn't take place in Greater Manchester.
Question, Fiona.
That is the question.
Michael spoke really well, by the way, as has Kemi Badenoch this week. But let me explain why I say about Greater Manchester. 5 years ago, I appointed a new Chief Constable, Sir Stephen Watson. And I think he's the outstanding police leader of his generation. And he said to me when he was appointed that he wanted to avoid any perception of two-tier because he felt this was a risk to policing in the times that we are living. And very much what the lady said, people should be treated equally in front of the police and the law, shouldn't they? And that's what it should absolutely be about. Early in his tenure, he said to me, I want to phase out rainbow cars. He said to a newspaper, I will never take the knee. And there was a backlash, but I supported him because I knew what he was trying to do. He was trying to make sure the police were seen as neutral, serving all communities. And therefore, I backed him. But then he went on to do what he said he would do, like politicians don't do sometimes, Michael. He said he would double the number of arrests. He has done. He said he would detect more crimes. He has done. He said he would get crime down. It is down in Greater Manchester. Knife crime is down in Greater Manchester. And then the interesting thing is confidence. I'm not saying they're perfect, but confidence in Greater Manchester Police is rising in all communities, actually, including the black community. And I think there is something here that needs to be applied nationally in terms of stepping back from this possibility that the police could be seen as two-tier. And I think it's right that the government are reviewing this guidance, because I don't think this guidance that was issued related to the Police Race Action Plan has got it right. So, Mark Novak said in his speech, and I've watched it all a couple of times, that there needs to be a common sense approach to law and order. And that is what we have done in Greater Manchester Police. But he also said that there shouldn't be tension and division. I'm Mayor of Greater Manchester. I know my words have consequences. All politicians do. If you give a preordained statement at 8 o'clock in the morning, believe me, you are well aware of what you say and what might happen later in that day. Those consequences were seen on the streets of Southampton, and the ringleaders of that violence used exactly the same words as the leader of the Reform Party when they were orchestrating that violence. And this is a big question that comes to the heart of this by-election. Honestly, do we want to carry on as Britain down this path towards a politics like the United States of America, where if people vote different ways, they won't talk to each other and they won't have any relationship with each other? Or do we want to be true to Britain and still live in a country where we work to find common ground, we work to come together and work to tackle issues like difficult issues like this together? I know what I believe in, and I believe in the latter, and that is what I am standing for in this by-election. But make no mistake, we cannot carry on just thinking that things aren't changing and it's all okay. It isn't okay. We must pull back from this type of politics, this poison dripping into our streets. Rob, to be fair, is right. The answer to violence can never be violence against the police, but that's what we saw on Tuesday night. And this is a moment for the country to step back from that and start finding common ground again.
So would you support, if everyone's being treated fairly and equally, would you support a ban on people carrying knives for religious reasons? I didn't know people were allowed to until the other day.
I think there's a case to look at that again. There was an exemption, wasn't there, for the Sikh religion, because it is a very important part of their faith. But in a world where, you know, we do have serious challenges with knife crime, I think it needs to be looked at. Although it needs a very careful debate, is what I would say.
Man there in the t-shirt, yeah.
So Robert, you said you're getting 30,000 more police officers on the streets. Where are you getting these 30,000 people from? Look at the situations you're putting them in. Who's going to train them up? How long is it going to take to get them trained, through, vetted on the streets? These will be people in the community at the minute, possibly looking to go into the police. 30,000, I think it's quite a lot. I think it'll take far too long to get them all through on the streets. And I don't think anyone will put the hand up to go and be a police officer anymore.
Okay. Briefly,
yeah, just to answer that, that'll be over the term of the Parliament. So if we were elected in the next general election over the next 4 or 5 years, that will be the target. When you say where they're coming from, you know, that'd be a problem for whoever is recruiting them. I mean, I want to focus on Makerfield. You know what I mean? I want to focus on Makerfield, not national politics, like, well, we're going to get 30,000 people.
People in the audience have got, I don't know, 20-year-olds now. They're growing up. They're looking for education. They're looking for employment. Would you be happy to send someone like that into the police at this stage of the country at the minute?
Well, I think ex-military, you know, when they come out of the military, would be absolutely perfect to be joining the police. So that's probably something that we'd look at.
Okay.
Police numbers in Greater Manchester are up, though, just so you know. We have recruited a lot more police. They're back above
Andy.
2010.
You know, let the rest of the panel in. I know, obviously, you want to speak. Jake, do we now have a two-tier policing policy?
I just want to touch on some of the points that have been raised here, including that one. And one of the reasons that police have been under so much strain for so many years because of successive cuts to police forces across the country, including local police forces and community police forces. One of the plans for the Liberal Democrats is to restore some of that community policing back into our local communities, so that police can feel connected to their areas, so that we can see more police on the streets connected to the people that they represent and the people that they protect. Because trust in the policing system is just as important as restoring the finances back into the policing system. That's what I want to see from a Liberal Democrat plan. But to touch on some of the points that have already been made, Michael, I think, spoke really, really well earlier when he talked about this case in general. People expect us as politicians, when something tragic and harrowing like this happens, to come together and figure out a solution, regardless of our political differences, knock our heads together and figure out what's going on and solve the problem. And to be fair to almost all parties around this table, that has been what has happened, and that's what we've seen from our politics so far. Unfortunately, for one party around this table, with Nigel Farage, we haven't. We've seen instead an opportunity, as he always takes, to drive more fear and division within our communities and politicise something when the parents of Henry specifically asked for that not to happen. And I think that is absolutely disgraceful.
Sarah, two-tier policing policy.
So I completely agree with Jake and what my colleagues around the table have said about this being an absolutely unbelievable tragedy. And I think when it comes to the cast question about two-tier policing, we have to be really careful, because we know that the police have lots of problems over the last few years. We still haven't seen the results of what's happened with the Sarah Everard inquiry. We know that if you're black, you're 2 times more likely to be arrested, 4 times more likely to be stopped and searched. These are really serious issues we should be looking at, and we really welcome the structural review that Labour is doing on police at the moment, because we do believe that things need to change. But I also want to just make this point about safety, because it's the first job of politicians to ensure that we live in a country that feels safe, and that is about supporting and resourcing the police and others in the right way. And when we have divisive language used like that, it's not just Henry's parents that are worried about their son, and it's every single parent of a son, a daughter, who's worried and calling them up and saying, make sure you take the safe way home tonight. Make sure you're with a friend, because we don't know what's going to happen on our streets. And I know for a fact that friends and neighbours are having those conversations with their children. And that is something I do not believe we stand for as a country. I believe we are a country that is tolerant, that welcomes our diversity, and that is something we should all be really proud of, and not let moments like this divide us.
Okay. All right, I'm going to squeeze in another question from Suzanne Worthington. Where are you? Oh, there you go.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, with lots more houses and warehouses planned for local green belt, why is this when it impacts, local nature and flood defences?
So certainly there are plans to build thousands of new homes in this area, warehouses too. I mean, looking at all the different plans in different places, it's a lot. Why do they have to be built here, and how does that, when it affects nature and flood defences, as you say? Rob?
Thanks. Great question, that, because it's something I've been right behind, especially the 400 houses in Winstanley, just behind Springpool. That's something that we're going against, because it's an extra 1,000 people living in Winstanley, extra 1,000 people using the shops, the doctors, the dentists, the roads. We haven't got the infrastructure, so that's something we're against. I know there's another development in Hinley that also goes through Greenbelt, 2,000 to 4,000 houses that, again, we're against, because it goes through the old Turners factory with all the asbestos that's contaminated the land. So something that happened at Marris Bridge, Junction 25, there's a big green belt grab that happened there. It came under the Greater Manchester Spatial Framework. It's now called Places for People. And what happens is that was a bit of a big green belt grab that was out of the Wigan Council's control. It was coming from, the Greater Manchester well, originally Greater Manchester Spatial Framework, but we all campaigned against that, because that's top quality farming land. There's been, sheep on there for donkey's years near the Sainsbury's, and that's going to get turned into a DB symmetry development. It's going to be big, massive warehouses, and like I say, it's something I'm passionately against. I'm passionately for saving Greenbelt in Makerfield.
So, I mean, this is a topic we deal with a lot on Question Time, and every time we do, there's lots of questions about it. And I have to say, generally, when we have MPs on the panel, every one of them has protested against building in their area, but is very keen for it to happen elsewhere. So, look, Rob, I'm going to ask you. You're against that particular planning development. Do you agree that there is a housing shortage? And if so, how do we tackle it without building on some green belt land and offending people who don't want it to use a phrase, in their backyard?
Well, I think we all know that immigration and house building hasn't kept up. So immigration puts a big strain, especially on housing, because if you get an extra 10 million people coming into the country in a short period of time, you're going to have the demand for housing, and renting houses is going to go through the roof. So your rental prices go up, housing demand goes up, house prices go up. People can't buy a house who are just getting on the property ladder at the start. So for me, immigration plays a massive part in the demand for new houses.
But sure, the people are already here, and you're not suggesting chucking them all out, all 10 million. So how do you plan to? What do you think the answer is?
Well, what we do is building on brownfield sites, prioritising brownfield sites first and foremost, because, like I say, once the green belt's gone, it's gone. people build on Greenbelt because it's cheaper, because you don't need to do any studies of what was there previously. Nothing's been there. It's virgin territory. So instead of going where there's been an old warehouse or an old industrial estate, so I'd prioritise building on brownfield sites.
Jake.
So this is always a really interesting discussion to have, because it feels like whenever we discuss housing and Greenbelt issues, us as politicians, and I'm sure people in the audience as well, feel like they're being put in one of two camps. You're either a NIMBY that wants to be against all housing on any Greenbelt whatsoever, or you're a YIMBY who wants to build all over the place, regardless of the consequences. That is not how this is. Like, this is a much more nuanced argument that we need to have about how we solve our housing crisis, because absolutely there is a housing crisis. Me and my husband are in a lucky position where we did a few years ago manage to buy our first house, but we had to work damn hard to be able to make sure we did. And I know that for future generations, people in 5, 10 years, even now, that is a massive struggle, and it's practically unobtainable for them. So yes, we need to build houses. Yes, we should be prioritising brownfield first, but we also need to have an honest conversation with people. It goes back to what somebody was mentioning earlier about honesty and answering the question properly. Sometimes that is going to require occasional development on a Greenbelt site, because we do need housing for it. But it's got to be balanced. We can't just concrete all over. We are blessed in Makerfield and across Greater Manchester with many wonderful Greenbelt sites. We need to protect as many of them as possible. But some of them, we are going to have to potentially use some of them for development to make sure that our children and the people of the future are going to be able to afford to buy a home.
Come on then.
So Rob mentioned the 400 houses on Springpool. I actually live on Springpool. Kingswood Homes, who are doing the development, speak of affordable housing. However, that housing is from a private company. It will not be affordable. What we actually need is more council housing as affordable homes. Obviously, Andy spoke about regenerating the town centre as he did in Stockport, and I think that's a really great idea, because at the end of the day, it's not necessarily affordable housing is just exploiting an existing Labour scheme in order to make more money. It's not actually for the people. Affordable housing isn't for the people. We need council housing. Thatcher sold off a lot of the council housing, and we need that back, really. But where do we put it is the issue, and I think Andy makes a great point. Put it in the town centre, you'll regenerate the town centre, especially something that Wigan needs.
Man at the very back in the check shirt. Yes, you at the very back.
How can politicians that are yes in my backyard about building houses, how can they be like that when in Makerfield, Ashton Town Centre, you will see that there's a big traffic problem. It's quite difficult. How can we build these houses but have sustainable traffic, make it easy to get around places?
All right, so you're saying if you build in the town centre, it'll make it more difficult. That's what you're saying. You're saying if you build in the town centres, it will make it more difficult. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's already quite bad, the traffic around Ashton Town Centre.
Let's hear from the woman in front of you in the glasses.
Rob, what worries me is that we've heard a few times now that people say we'll build on brownfield sites, but your boss, Nigel Farage, took a £5 million payment from basically a crypto billionaire. Lots and lots of, suddenly he's a reformer, a party for cryptocurrency. How are we to trust that you and your party wouldn't sell this off to the highest bidder when you have got a leader who runs your party who will say up the IRA for £80? I think it's shameful.
OK. I have to say, I have no idea if he said up the IRA for £80. I don't know if you do, Rob. Do you? I must. Let me. Apparently he did. Let me just give you a chance to answer that.
Yeah. So with regards to the £5 million, that's going to Parliament, so they're going to decide on whether there was anything wrong in it. So it's something beyond my control anyway. With regards to Greenbelt, well, I live here, so I don't want any Greenbelt being spoilt. There's already the M6 that goes past that's knocking out, fumes that's going past. We've got the East Lancs as well. We need to protect our green spaces. It's one of the reasons I got involved in politics, is to protect green spaces. And it was the Junction 25 development where DB Symmetry, building houses at Marris Bridge, that's got me into politics first and foremost, to throw me hat in the ring. So that's an hill I'll die on, protecting Greenbelt.
All right, we have got a hell of a lot of time left, so I just want to make sure I get you all in. No, you all get to answer, but just perhaps not an enormous length. Yes, Michael.
Thank you. The gentleman's absolutely right, because I live in Ashton. I know what the problems that we have there. And the problem that we've had over years and years and years is that we've had development after development after development, but yet no infrastructure to go with that. And we need to make sure that we put the infrastructure in first before we have the development. So if we don't have the infrastructure, it's roads that get clogged up, it's the drainage system, it's doctor's appointments, it's schools places, it's all those things. And our infrastructure is the same as it was pretty much when I was born about 55 years ago, not 60. So that's the problem. We do need to prioritise brownfield sites first. And the other thing was
do you believe, as Jake does, that there will have to be some building on Greenbelt?
But that should be the last possible resort if that's the case.
And
but
with the infrastructure.
But I want to make sure that we protect it at all costs. Places for everyone. When I was a councillor, we didn't even get a vote on that. That was decided at cabinet level.
You might need to explain places for everyone. Those who
so this was the spatial strategy that came from the combined authority that was signed off by all 10 districts, and they had to agree across the 10 districts, and there was horse trading on where different parts would go. But as a backbench councillor, we never got a vote on that. That was decided by the Labour cabinet here in Wigan.
Right.
So much for democracy.
And I know you want to speak. I'm just going to be Sarah, and then I promise I'm going to come to you. Sarah.
Yeah, so of course we want to protect as much of our green belt as possible. This area is incredibly beautiful. It's absolutely amazing. And what we need is the right houses at the right price in the right place, which is simply not what developers are being incentivised to do at the moment, because they are being incentivised to build, 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 build. So we agree we need more council houses, 150,000 more council houses, end right to buy, make sure that councils can keep those homes where they need to be.
You want to end right to buy completely?
That's in our manifesto.
Great aspiration for people. Well done.
But one thing I do want to say is that the idea of blaming our housing crisis on immigration is absolutely wild to me, actually.
Well,
Robert.
that says more about you, because we've got an extra 10, 20 million people come in the country.
Do you think that if... Do you think that
do you
if
not
we...
think an extra 10 million people is going to have an effect on housing?
Do you think that
UK?
if we lock down our borders, we're going to solve the housing crisis?
Well,
is that going to solve it?
The thing is, the more people you have in a country, the more houses you're going to need. I know it might sound...
He's really good at explaining things like this, isn't he?
I'll make sure.
Yeah. Using immigration on the issue of housing, I think, is absolutely...
Are you saying it has no impact on housing?
I think Andy wanted to come in.
Do you want to just answer that question, Rob? Do you think it has
Does
no impact
immigration have an effect on housing?
Whoever lives in this country has an impact on housing, of course.
All right.
The numbers of people in a country. That's not necessarily to do with immigration.
Let me let Andy answer this question. So I just want to say, incidentally, about this business about Nigel Farage and saying up the IRA. He says he was tricked into doing that. That was not something that he would have said otherwise. I'm just saying, he's not here to defend himself. And as always on this panel, if an accusation is made against someone, it is my job to make sure that they get fair representation. So, Andy, lots more houses, you know that's the case. Lots and lots, thousands. Why do they have to be built on Greenbelt when it impacts nature and flood defences?
Well, I've been saying in this election that we need to change Labour, but that applies locally as well. And I do think Wigan needs to rethink its approach to planning and regeneration and do less of the burden of development on Greenfield. And exactly as the gentleman said in the middle, go to the local centres and start to repurpose those centres, take away the redundant retail space or the surplus retail space. So we've seen that in Farnworth, a brilliant example. Stockport, you mentioned. Wigan's been a little slow to this, and it needs to get into this because the combined authority that I lead is putting money into mayoral development corporations to repurpose towns, and this constituency is full of towns that could benefit. We do need the biggest council house building programme in this country since the post-war period. We do need to solve this housing crisis and get people off lists, and it doesn't mean building the homes on the green sites. Okay, there may be some development needed there. I do oppose too the Winstanley Hall development that people have mentioned. I don't think that is justified. There's zero benefit as far as I can see for the local community. If you look at the question of infrastructure that Michael rightly raised, this goes back to Westminster. Where's the money for this constituency to solve the flooding problem that you have in that South Hindley area? I was the MP for Hindley when new homes were being built on Blackberry Drive in 2002. water was running through those homes before they were even occupied. They flooded before they were even occupied. I remember that. And we've still got terrible problems. Hindley Green, Platt Bridge, Abram, Ashton, flooding, serious internal flooding. And in my mind, no development on that scale goes ahead until that flooding infrastructure is in. And even then, it shouldn't be possibly as big as it's being proposed. And that is absolutely crucial, as is the road infrastructure. The congestion is
OK, well, let's just talk about the flooding.
People say, but we are putting that road infrastructure in.
Let's talk about the flooding, because there was a big flood. There was a big flood in 2015 at Platt Bridge. The Greater Manchester Combined Authority said, right, we will come up with a solution by 2018. You became mayor and chair of that authority in 2017. Here we are, 10 years later. There is no solution. We're now hearing from the Greater Manchester Combined Authority there might be a solution in 2028. That is on your watch, Andy. Why have you not sorted that out?
No, I'm sorry. I think you need to...
You're chair of that authority.
I think your researchers need to do a bit better job on this one. The Environment Agency holds the money for flooding infrastructure. United Utilities
Sure, I
the
get
budget.
that.
United
but the authority
Utilities
said a solution
have just
would be
put
presented,
people's
and they
bills
haven't.
up here by 23% last year, and they've got £800 million in profits at the same time. Where is the flooding infrastructure for this constituency? It's not the Greater Manchester Combined Authority that has the money to deal with that.
Well, then why did why did the Greater Manchester Combined Authority say a solution would be found by 2018? If it's nothing to do with them, why did they make that pledge?
That was before that was before my time. I don't know who said that.
Well, you've been mayor and chair of that for many years, and there is no solution.
I have chaired a group looking at the Platt Bridge floods since those floods, and I've made the point to the authorities, how can this constituency have flooded seriously on Boxing Day in 2015 and then again on New Year's Eve, New Year's Day 2025? I remember David Cameron and his wellies in the home counties when they flooded saying, money will be no object. We will spend whatever it needs. Why does someone like that never come up here and say that to people in Abram and Blackbridge?
So my home was flooded in 2002. I didn't see Tony Blair coming saying anything at all. At least David Cameron was there.
I've got a couple.
No, Tony Blair wasn't here.
OK, listen, I've got a couple
going through my front room.
I've got a couple of minutes left. I can't promise your questions get answered, but let's just hear what we've got to say in that 2 minutes. Yes, the woman there in the glasses. Yes, you.
I'd just like to say that if there's any cold rage that should happen, it should be directed towards the politicians that are trying to sow the seeds of... No, the ones that are trying to sow the seeds of division between us. Because we're basically being manipulated by billionaires at this point to target the most vulnerable members of our community. Yeah. And it shouldn't be like that.
The man a little bit further along, yes.
So Rob said that controlling immigration would tackle the housing crisis, but how does he plan on funding and tackling immigration?
Do you want to answer that? You've only got about a minute, Rob. I'm not sure that's fair, but do you want to give it a go?
A minute to answer that question. It's a tough question. It's a complex one as well, but that would be for the Home Secretary to sort. You're asking me how I would fund it. You know, Z Yusuf has worked on... So just repeat it again.
How are you planning on tackling and funding immigration?
Well, the thing is, we stopped the boats first and foremost. We stopped 1,000 people coming in a day. You know, the people, they turn into HMOs. Ask anyone in Wigan. I've been knocking on doors in every ward for a good few months now. HMOs comes up time and time again. Those houses are driving. HMOs are driving up the cost of rents. So there's fewer houses for people to rent in this area because out of town developments are buying pubs, big houses, turning them into HMOs and renting them out to big companies to house illegal immigrants. That's a fact.
Right. I am going to look at all of you with your hands up, but we are out of time. I am so sorry. Yes, look at you guys. Oh. That was going to be your chance. I'm so sorry. I know, you're keen as mustard. We are out of time. We have an hour and we've filled it. I just want to say thank you very much to the panel for coming along here this evening for this kind of slightly unusual programme, but I think an important one. Thank you, of course, to all of you for coming along and putting your points, and I can only apologise I couldn't fit more of you in. I just want to say, again, of course, we've got 5 candidates here. There are 14 candidates in this election, and the details of those candidates are on the screen now. But for now, I just want to say thank you to you. Thank you to all of you for coming on this evening and putting your points with such passion and such articulacy. And, of course, thank you to you at home for watching. Question time is coming off air for the World Cup. Yes, indeed, for you footy fans. But we will be... Good, says Andy. Why is that, Andy? Anyway, but we will be back in September, ready to start again. So, for now, thank you, everybody. from Makerfield from Question Time. Bye-bye.